Happy Monday. Today we're starting chapter 5, probably finishing chapter 5. And oh, wait a minute. We still will have class on Friday, so we can go over the exam. Do we need to? Nah. If we finish chapter 5 today, we're not going to have class on Friday.
I have a question about one of the questions on the exam.
Okay. Like a lot of people haven't taken it.
Can you just look at mine for a second?
Yeah. Give me a second.
Because we went over it in class and I chose that answer, but it marked me wrong.
Okay. Let me check. Okay. You flagged it. So let me see.
Yeah.
The key is wrong. You were right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I'll fix that.
Yep.
Good job. I mean, overall, you did great on the exam.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's kind of a thing. Kind of good catch, Haley. All right. Cognitive development in infancy and toddlerhood. All right. So, cognition, thinking, thoughts, language, problem solving, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Cognitive development in the first 2 years. So, throughout development, cognition and language mutually support each other. We see that newborns become more assertive, purposeful beings who solve simple problems and start to master language. Toddlers, toddlers' first words build on early cognitive achievements, and new words and expressions increase the speed and flexibility of their thinking. So Jean Piaget said that we go through these 4 stages of cognitive development. The first one, the pre-operational stage, he said it's all about how we interact with the world. It's all about how we move our bodies. He called it the sensor motor stage. Um, how our body's movement with our hands and our arms and our legs and mouth and all that, and our senses interact. Uh, so he said that we organize the ways we organize our senses when we experience things. We organize our experiences with our senses. Our senses. Let's see. So in the beginning, our schemas, the mental representations of objects, events, and things and such. They're more around, again, these interactions with our environment and linking them to our physical senses. Then later, our schemes become more deliberate and creative, which is evidence of thinking before acting. And so it's all about changing through adaptation and organization. So, adaptation, where we're building schemes through direct interaction with the environment, you must know the difference between assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation, think of it as a long way of saying similar, using current schemes to interpret the world. So when we come across something that represents something we've already come across, meaning it's similar to it, we'll put it into that category. Accommodation is when we have to modify existing categories or create new ones. So when we're young, we're doing a lot of accommodation, and as we age, we 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 come in contact with more and more things and we experience more and more. So we put them into categories of things that we've already made. Using assimilation and accommodation, uh, cognitive equilibrium, steady, comfortable state in which children assimilate more than they accommodate until they come across something new. And then they experience cognitive disequilibrium, a state of discomfort and rapid cognitive change in which children have to shift from assimilation to accommodation. So, I mean, if you consider what a 6 month old experiences, um, a 6 month old is going to be presented with all sorts of new things. I mean, especially when we're starting to take in foods, you know, mom's always trying to give us peas and carrots and turnips and whatever. And baby's like, that ain't good. Changing our schemes through organization. Organizational is an internal process where we're linking together schemes in an interconnected cognitive system. So the whole idea is um, in intro we did like an in class activity where I had people write down the first three things that came to mind when I gave them the color yellow or red, I think. And so what I was asking you to do was to reference your concept map, your your conceptual grid, which basically is saying that we link all of these things. Like when we think of like the color red, many of us are thinking of like right now, like a rose or fire or a stop sign or a cardinal or something that is lipstick, something that is blood, that is strongly linked with the meaning of red. And that's what this is about. It's organizing meanings for things. Like, well, we will first come across, say, a cat, and we'll think, all right, it's got four legs and a tail. It's hairy. And then you think of, they show you a dog, and you're like, oh, that's not a cat. Or maybe you will think it is a cat, but you still put it into the same category, or you put it into a similar category where they're linked as a four-legged, tailed pet. So the sensor-motor stage, birth to age 2, we're building schemes through sensory and motor exploration, and it's a circular reaction where we'll stumble onto a new experience, and then the repetition of chance behaviors forms them into schemes. Right? So here's this little kid playing with a leaf or something, right? Just happened to be there. I will not ask you to know these. Um, the reason why I kept it in here, though, was because I wanted you to have a basic understanding of, in the beginning, we're running on reflexes, innate, uh, automatic um, responses to stimuli. And then by the end, by 18 months to 2 years, uh, we are understanding um, what's, we're better understanding what's going on around us, and we're manipulating what's going on around us. And essentially, we're starting to predict. I do want you to know what object permanence is. We learned this in intro again, right? Knowing that an object is permanently there, even though it's no longer visible. Um, it's present within the first few months of life. What does that mean? Okay, so when we are newborns or a few months old, we lack object permanence, but through rapid uh, uh, development, we start to understand like the the world's laws, the the principles of things that should and should not be, basic things. So we develop these expectations, and so the what like I said, one of the coolest things about psychology is that they'll find really clever ways to answer questions. And so when we want to know if a baby knows something or understands something, we will essentially find a way to see if they stare at it, at something. We'll ask them a question in a different way, and if they stare at it, it means that they didn't expect it. So here's the violation of expectation method. So here you can see that they put this like little block, this little sheet on a table or something. Then they take this little carrot and then they slide it behind the sheet, and the little carrot comes out. The same thing happens with a tall carrot. Slide it behind the sheet, and then the tall carrot comes out. Now in B in the bottom where it says the test events, you have the expected event. And so what's happening here is that you have a sheet, it's a different color, but they have a little window cut out of it. And they slide the little carrot behind it, and the little carrot comes out. But when they do that, you can see that because the little carrot is shorter than where the window ledge is, where that opening is, they never see it through the window. And they're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And they're off and looking. Then they do the same thing with a tall carrot, and they slide it behind the sheet, and they're expecting to see the top half of that carrot through the window. But it's a trick, right? It's a fake window, it's a faux window. So when they slide the carrot behind it, they don't see the top of the carrot. And that violated their expectations. And they'll stare at it and be like, "What? That doesn't make any sense." Any questions so far? All right. Mental representation. Internal depictions the mind can manipulate. Images. These are mental pictures of objects, people, spaces. Concepts. These are categories of similar objects or events. So a concept is a basic example of something. This permits advanced object permanence, make believe play. We're going to discuss make believe play later, and the importance of um, being a part of that as the caregiver. Um, Leads to problem solving, understanding symbols. So, problem solving. Infants employ intentional means and action at about 7 to 8 months. They're able to manipulate objects at this time, and they're able to see something and apply it to something else by 10 to 12 months. The same rules. By the end of the first year, they have some ability to move beyond the trial and error or experimentation. Now they're going to be more deliberate. They're going to be more intentional and not just try whatever this thing can possibly move in whatever way. They're if they want to like get to like a jar full of cookies or something, they're not just, fumbling around. They're really focusing on the lid. So now evaluating Piaget's sensor motor stage, uh, basically his theory. Um, so what does happen when Piaget said is, yeah, they really do begin to anticipate events. They will search for objects that are hidden, which suggests, the development of object permanence. Um, yes, there's various sensor motor schemes. They do exhibit make believe play. They do understand the symbolism within pictures. But things that one of the things that Piaget said is that it was these discrete stages, that there was no real overlap, and things didn't happen until, well into after the first year, towards the second year, where a lot of these things occurred. And so what they found was, you know, over time, that we develop these abilities way earlier, a lot of them, a lot. And they're not discrete stages, they're overlapping. Yeah. All right. So let's see. Oh, I do want you to know this, the video deficit effect. So we see that there's a poor performance after babies watch a video of someone doing something instead of a live demonstration. So the idea is they want the 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 baby to either mimic something or respond to something, um, by after viewing a video versus doing it in person. And so, what could be the causes? Lack of eye contact, lack of a direct conversation, or having a shared focus. Meaning, when you're interacting with a baby or a toddler, the baby's looking at you and you're looking at the thing that they want them to look at, and so they're like, okay, we're looking at this together. Okay, so you can kind of help focus them onto the thing that you want them to focus on. The more effective videos are interactive. What does that make you think of? So okay, so the video deficit effect means essentially, if you want a kid to learn something, the best way to do it is to do it in person. Don't throw a video of someone doing something, right? So that's the video deficit effect. But it's saying that the more effective videos, however, are the interactive ones. Does that make you think of anything?
Like someone that's like a hands-on learner.
Okay. That's what it's suggesting, that we're all kind of hands-on learners. But the key, what I'm asking about is the interactivity. Does it make you think of any kids shows that are interactive?
Like Dora the Explorer and stuff like that,
Exactly.
where they're
That's exactly the one I was thinking about. Yes. Say this, or say that, and then the show pauses and waits for the kid to say it. I remember when Dora first came out, I was like, this is really annoying. This is really annoying to watch. It was like they're constantly asking the kids to participate. And I remember watching my kids, they'd be all in. They'd be like, map, or whatever. What did they used to have to say? What were some commands where the kids would have to?
swiper, no swiping.
That's one of them, right? Right.
Oh, the backpack.
I'm the map. I'm the map. I'm the map.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What was the backpack one?
Backpack, backpack.
Yeah, but no.
Oh.
What were the things the kids had to participate in? I remember swiper, no swiping. What else? How else were the kids engaged in this show?
They would she would have the map out, and she would have kids point to where they were going or whatever certain places looked like.
Okay.
She would also like have them repeat the words in Spanish.
Okay. Yeah. Very interactive. So the core knowledge perspective, right? Infants are born with innate knowledge systems or core domains of thought. This allows us to grasp new information quickly. It supports rapid early development. Experience, though, is essential to extend our core knowledge. The suggested domains, meaning that what are the main disciplines or the main areas of focus? They are going to be physical, linguistic, psychological, and numerical. I like the numerical one, right? Because it's not like infants know 1 + 1 is 2. They just know that 2 is more than 1. And so, again, they're doing the violation of expectations. So here you have what's called the original event. Okay, this is the habituation process. This is the experience process, where they're getting them kind of familiar with the process of this goes behind a sheet flips down, shows you 1. Okay, good, because we only put 1 back there. Then they put a second sheet, okay, or I'm sorry, then they put a second little mouse behind the sheet. Then the hand leaves empty, the screen drops, and it shows 2. Good. Then they that's the one. That's the expected outcome. Now the other one in C is where the screen will drop, and there's still 1, and the infant's like, what? Where did the other one go? I saw you put 2 back there, right? And so, how is the infant going to respond to the unexpected outcome? What did I say was the way that we know that something's up with them? Is any of this making any sense?
They just stare.
They stare at it. Exactly. If something violates their expectations, if something is unexpected or not right, they'll stare at it. Okay, as I said, many cognitive changes of infancy are gradual and continuous rather than abrupt and stage-like. Various aspects of infant cognition change unevenly due to varying experiences with different tasks. And the findings serve as a basis for information processing. Information processing is a fancy way of saying memory. So what is information processing? It says it's held for processing in 3 areas: sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. Sensory memory is also known as sensory register. And so this is nothing more than the stimulation of the sense organs. So when you look at, like if you quickly look at the sun or something real bright and you look away, it's kind of bleached out, dark in an area. It's essentially creating an after image. That's sensory memory. It's happening at the organ itself. Short-term working memory, right? This is our now memory. This is what's happening right now. This is our short-term memory right now. We're using it intentionally, deliberately. Okay, this is our conscious now time. Does anybody remember what the average number of things stored in short-term memory? What the average number of items we can retain?
7?
7 plus or minus 2. Well done. Yep. And then how long does short-term memory last roughly? Maybe want to take a guess?
Like 30 seconds.
It is like 30 seconds. Yep. Yep. For years, they thought it was 20. Then they bumped it up by 10. And then there's the long-term memory, and that is basically, it can last potentially forever, and it's potentially unlimited. So the central executive portion, right, of our cognitive system. So essentially, this is the decision-making part. This is the one that says, okay, it's in the front, right? It's in your prefrontal cortex. It's saying, all right, I'm experiencing something, a sight, a sound, touching something, and I want to focus on it, and I'm going to work with it. So it sends signals to other parts of the brain to do what it is that needs to be done. But the decision is made up here, right? The decision is made in the front, the frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex. So we call it the central executive portion. It's the conscious part of the mind. It coordinates incoming information with existing information. It selects, applies, and monitors strategies that aid memory storage, comprehension, reasoning, and problem solving. And some things, because we're so familiar with them, some things happen automatically that do not require the central executive function. These are well learned. They require no space and working memory, and these can be done while focusing on other information. It's like walking and chewing bubble gum, right? So you think, well, that's kind of a silly example, but walking wasn't always so easy for us. So here's the basics of how memory works, also known as information processing system. We have something that comes to us. It could be a sight, a sound, taste, touch, smell. And our sense organ responds. It's stimulated, right? And then if it's automatic, if it's reflexive, the thing that, it's like a burn, you put your hand on a hot stove, here's your response. You pull away. But if it's not something that requires an immediate response, or if it's not something that's going to cause a reflex, then and if you're paying attention, I mean, here's the important part: if you're paying attention to it, it'll go and actually be processed in your head. Because everything we see, hear, we don't perceive all of it. We only perceive what we focus on, right? So as you're listening to me, you could be perceiving my words and understanding my words, but you're not focusing on the pressure of your socks around your ankles, but now you are, right? So we have sensory input constantly, but we're not perceiving it all because we're selectively attending to things. So here's our sense organs are being stimulated, and then if we decide that we need to focus on something, and that's where the central executive comes in to play, to say, okay, let's pay attention to that, then we'll go to short-term working memory. Then it's the now, then we're aware of it, then we're looking at the keyboard or the TV or the computer or our phone or the coffee cup and all the things that we are deciding to attend to. Then if it's important, if it's meaningful, or if we want to remember it later, we'll store it into long-term memory so we can retrieve it when we want to use it again. That's the basics behind memory. Okay, cognitive system improvements during childhood and adolescence. We have a greater working memory capacity, meaning in the beginning, we can't remember 7 plus or minus 2 items. We can only operate on maybe a few. We can increase our speed for working on information. We see gains in executive function. These are the mental operations and strategies for cognitively challenging situations, like controlling our attention, coordinating information and working memory, and planning for the future. And I'm not talking about, oh, I need a 5-year plan. I need an IRA. You're a toddler. You're not. But like planning for, okay, I'm going to go up. I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk over there. I'm going to grab that toy. Cognitive gains in infancy and toddlerhood, attention, improved efficiency. They're able to shift their focus. Again, when we want to know, and don't forget this, when we want to know if a baby understands something that can't speak to us yet, we need to do nothing more than see what they're paying attention to. Well, at first, their world is about novelty. If it's something new, they're going to look at it and stare at it because they're trying to learn about this new thing. Well, eventually, that will give way to sustained attention and not just focusing on what's that? That's new. What's that over there? That's new. That's new. And staring at it. Eventually, they'll look at something and hold it. So, of course, our memory's going to be improving as we age. We can hold things for longer. Recognition and recall improve steadily with age. Recognition, I've seen this before. Recall, I'm pulling it out myself. Long-term recall advances as the brain's neural circuits develop. So I do want you to know what infantile amnesia is. That's the inability for us to recall things that happened prior to our 2nd or 3rd year of life. Right? We don't really have our first memories that last until probably the age of 3. And even those are going to be really, really sparse. So why could this be? Because our hippocampus hasn't finished organizing, hasn't finished developing. It's making new connections. So every time it makes a new connection, it's losing the old one. The nonverbal nature of early memory processing, what does that mean? It means that if you think of your memories, you almost think of them in like a story, like with words. Well, we don't have words. We don't have a refined language yet. The lack of a clear self-image when we think of stories, specifically ones that are related to ourselves. We are the star. We are the character, the main character. Well, without having a clear self-image, we're not able to form those memories. Categorizing, where we're grouping similar objects and events. Young infants, they will sort based on physical properties. This one's big, that one's small. That one's big, that one's small. Put the small ones over here, put the big ones over there. And then as we age, we'll begin to categorize things based on other features. Toddlers will categorize more flexibly, and they'll consider multiple groupings. Like toddlers may group things not by size, but by shape. Maybe not shape, but by color. So we'll shift it from a perceptual to a conceptual categorization. I want you to know about Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. Essentially, it's where there's a modeler that's helping the individual when they reach something that they cannot do on their own. The model, the skilled partner, which is usually in the form of an adult, will scaffold. They will lift it up just a little bit to make it easier. So just think of something as simple as what they're showing you here, like painting, coloring, right? So a model would show how to keep inside the lines if that's what they want, or if that's what they're trying to figure out if they can do. And so maybe they'll draw, the borders for the child first, and then say, okay, now go ahead and fill it in. That's scaffolding. the social origins of make-believe play. These greatly extend the toddler's cognitive and social skills. So these are taught and scaffolded under guidance of experts like adults, older siblings. These toddlers are encouraged or should be encouraged to participate. The idea is to make very clear that this is make-believe, this is not real. When adults participate, toddlers' make-believe play is more complex and often will use this to teach cultural values. So these are the three main things, okay, first, that we just covered. The infants and toddlers create new schemes by acting on the physical world. Piaget said sensoromotor. Our whole cognitive development in the beginning essentially deals with, initially, it starts with our interactions between our environment and specifically our movements and our body senses. And then gradually it becomes more, it develops beyond that to something where they can start to coordinate and make plans about things. The next idea, the next theme of cognitive development is basically memory. How does our memory work? And it's essentially the idea of our three memory stores: the sensory memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, advancing. And then the third major component to cognitive development is that we learn it from socially mediated means, meaning that a lot of our cognitive development depends on the modeling and imitation interaction. Any questions? Infant and toddler intelligence tests. So the idea is that we can measure individual variations in development. So they use Bailey scales at infant and toddler development. They're going to be looking at the cognitive or the language or the motor scales. They could also look at the, they can ask the parents questions and say, okay, so how's their emotional regulation? How do they get along with others? How are their behaviors at home or around other family members? And these are going to be used for screening. So an IQ or an intelligence quotient, the idea behind that is that you will get not only your individual score, but you'll also get it relative to the population or a large group. And that is what we call standardization. And intelligence seems to be normally distributed, meaning that, well, I'll show you in a second. Infant tests do not assess the same aspects of intelligence. So probably because we don't have a real good way to measure an infant's intelligence. Not in a thorough way. We have some things, but really what they're looking for, that's what it says, largely used to screen for developmental problems, if anything. So they'll call them developmental quotients, not intelligence quotients. So they're looking to see, do you perceive this? Can you hold this? Can you stand? So here's a normal distribution of intelligence test scores. So if you were to measure some, like an adult's intelligence, the average score would be an IQ of 100. And then they give you standard deviations and so on and so forth. So if you have a IQ of 115, that means that your intelligence is going to be 84%. It's going to be greater than 84% of the population. If it's 130, then it's going to be greater than whatever that was, 84, 98. Home life assessment stands for home observation for measurement of the environment. They want to know, how is the organization and safety of the home environment? Do they have the appropriate play materials? Is the parent giving emotional and verbal responsiveness? Is the parent accepting of the child? Is the parent involved with the child? Is it just the same old daily routine, or are there opportunities for variety in daily stimulation? Meaning, you know what, Susie, it's 9 o'clock, time to watch Dora. That's it. That's what we're gonna do. That's our routine. Or is it, hey, let's try something else today. Let's try, playing with blocks or something like that. So the home life assessment is linked to toddlers' mental test performance. So when it comes to infant and toddler childcare, like daycare, what are some good things? What are some things that they have found to be important in cognitive development? The characteristics include the right physical setting. Is it an enriched environment? Do they have toys? Do they have things that they need to interact with? The equipment could be, do you have the right size tables, the right size chairs? Do you have that sort of thing? Things to color on, color with, dress up clothes, that sort of thing. How many children there are to how many caregivers there are, what daily activities there are, the quality of them, the number of interactions between the adults and children, the caregivers' qualifications. Are they certified? Have they taken classes? Do they have a level of education, a particular level of education? Also, the relationships with the parents, the relationships between the child and the parent, and the caregiver and the parent. And then lastly, the licensing and accreditation. So what they did in one study is they looked at how well children developed language, and they found that when they had high quality childcare and high quality preschool experiences or exposures, they had a high mean language score. But if they had a high quality childcare but a low quality preschool, it dropped significantly. And it didn't matter if it was vice versa. If it was a low quality childcare and a high quality preschool, it didn't make any difference at all. You need a line, you need an alignment between both. And if it's low quality childcare and low quality preschool, then they have the worst language development. Early intervention for at-risk infants and toddlers. We know that poverty is a huge determining factor that is seen, that is witnessed, that is impacting our children's test scores. So a stressful home environment increases the likelihood that children will remain poor as adults. So what are some interventions that break the cycle of poverty? Center-based child rearing and social services. So that means it's like a facility versus home-based training for parents by skilled adults. Participating children in these programs score higher on mental tests, and these benefits maintain. They created the Early Head Start. It's a federal program with 1,000 different sites. Don't they have one? They had one up here, don't they? I feel like they do. Language development milestones. The second half of their first year, they distinguish their language sounds, segment speech into words and phrase units. By 1 year, they'll say their first word. By 1.5 to 2, they'll start combining words. By 3.5, they form complex sentences. And by age 6, they understand the meaning of about 14,000 words. Chomsky said that we have to have this innate ability to develop language. It's too complex for us to learn it piece by piece individually. So infants are biologically prepared to learn language. The interactionist model says there's an interaction between not only what we have, our inner capabilities or capacities, but also the interaction with our environment. So getting ready to talk, cooing at 2 months, babbling at 6 months, becoming a communicator, joint attention of child and caregiver between 3 and 4 months, meaning they're both attending to each other. The give and take mutual imitations of sounds, right? The baby will say something, mother says something, baby says it back and forth. Pre-verbal gestures by the end of the first year, pointing, doing this. Around the age of 1, they acquire 1 to 3 new words per week. I want you to know the difference between underextension and overextension. Underextension, they're applying newly learned words too narrowly. What does that mean? It means that if a kid learns what a cat is, and then at their aunt's house, and then they go to visit their, best friend, and they have a cat too, and the kid says, "That's not a cat. My aunt's got the cat." That's underextending. Overextending would be to say that all four-legged animals are cats. Know that these combining into 2 or 3 words is called telegraphic speech, like a telegraph. High content word pairings, meaning that the words are very important, meaning that if they say, milk please, they're getting everything to you that they need to. They're asking, and they're saying exactly what they're asking for. Copying adult gradually shifts to using grammatical rules. Again, the average age for using our first words is about 1. So that's between 8 and 18 months. What are some factors that influence language development? Gender, girls are slightly ahead of boys. Or temper, right? So if we are difficult, chances are we're going to be delayed in speech development. Caregiver child conversation and reading to the kids, and vocabulary growth. What does that mean? It means that the more children are spoken to, the better their vocabulary. Don't worry about language style. Okay, let's see. Infant directed speech. Everyone's done this. We speak to infants differently than we speak to adults. Could you imagine if we talk to adults like we talk to infants? How are you today, Patrick? Patrick. Right, so it's short sentences, high-pitched, exaggerated expression, clear pronunciation, distinct pauses between speech segments, clear gestures to support verbal meaning, the repetition of new words in many contexts. Infant-directed speech and parent-child conversation create a zone of proximal development for language acquisition. Essentially, it's saying, when parents are speaking to their kids, they're helping them, they're scaffolding their learning of language by introducing them to new words, intentionally or not intentionally. Sometimes it's not, but they're still doing it by using new words in various contexts. It could be something as simple as, fork or spoon. Right? So yesterday you had the fork or the spoon probably. You were given the spoon yesterday, and it was a different colored spoon on a different plate, eating different food, but you still have the one thing that's consistent. That's that spoon, or at least looks like it. So supporting early language learning. With infants, we want to respond to their coos and their babbles, establish joint attention, use infant-directed speech, play social games. With toddlers, engage in joint make-believe play, engage in frequent conversations, read often, and talk about, even just talking about books. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Just remember to take your exam by midnight tonight.